You've recently lost a loved one, and now you've learned that you are going to be the executor of the estate. What does that mean, and what are you actually responsible for? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So you and your family have gotten together at your loved one's home. You found the will. You see in the will that you have been designated as the executor. And now you're trying to figure out, okay, what does that mean? What do I need to do? I should probably get started on that right away. But before you do, make sure that you don't also find the trust documents. If there is a trust, then this is going to be much easier for you. But in today's video, we're going to be talking more about a probate situation where a will is found. However, there was no trust. So now your responsibilities are going to become a little bit more complicated. Not more complicated, you're just going to have a little bit more on your plate. So let's start with the first thing that you need to do is you do need to start the probate process. At least most states, you want to check with your attorney because it's going to depend on what the value of the estate is. If there's real estate involved and that real estate's over a certain dollar amount, you're definitely going to have to file for probate. Once you've done that, the courts are going to assign you as the personal representative, or they're going to make it legal for you to be the executor or personal representative. So prior to that, you and your family need to get together and make sure that it makes sense for you to still be the executor. You may decide that that's too much for you to handle and that you don't have time. Circumstances happen. So you do have a little bit of a window prior to that letter being issued by the court saying that you are now the personal representative. So you are going to be issued what's called a letter of appointment. At least that's what it's called here in Arizona. It's also called letter administration or letter of testamentary, depending on the state, depending on the county and the courts that you're dealing with, and also has to deal with whether or not there's a will. In our case, we're talking about an informal probate, something that's very simple. The will's been found. And so that's where I'm going to be taking you through a list of what you're going to do if you're just handling an informal probate. Next, you are going to want to make sure that you protect the assets. First thing I always recommend to clients, I am a real estate agent here in the Phoenix metro area, and I handle probate, estate sales, trust sales, those types of things for clients, especially if those people are out of state. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is protect the property. That may mean you have to have the locks changed because you actually do have to protect the property against other family members. If this was an aunt or a grandparent and everybody had a key to the house, you're probably going to want to do that because you need to protect things before people start removing items from the home, because those are all going to be considered assets. Make sure the house is secure. You also don't want to have vandals breaking into the home. They could live in a neighborhood that everybody feels is safe and they don't even lock the door. That happens, in some small towns in America, that does happen. So do make sure that you put up some sort of no trespassing sign. Consider having the locks changed. If anything, just making sure the house is secure and locked. I got my little notebook here. I got to make sure I take my notes. You're going to want to reach out to the insurance company at that point. Let them know that the loved one that lived in that home has passed away so that they can put more of a vacant insurance policy on the home. It does cost a little bit more because there's not anybody there. So they do want to make sure that you get a better insurance policy on the home. Make sure all the utilities stay on. Make sure they all stay on. I understand here in Arizona, especially how important it is to have air conditioning running in the summer months. Even if you're not going to be in the home all the time going through belongings and stuff, at minimum keep it right around 85 degrees. It gets too hot and then all of a sudden you've got cabinet doors, regular doors, any type of wood flooring, any type of furniture in the house, it'll start warping if it sits in hot temperatures for too long. So, and then you're going to want to make sure that you forward the mail to yourself if you're the executor. Okay, number 3 is you're going to start identifying and gathering information about the assets of the home. So this is going to be, look for all the documents as you're going through all the paperwork in the home. I did a video on this telling you the things that you should keep a hold of. So if you want, I'll pin that in the comments below, and then, or in the description of this video, and also pin it up here for you. And there'll be a link of it at the end of the video as well. So anyway, what you're going to want to do is you want to hang on to any bank accounts. Start gathering all that information, any assets for the property. This could be vehicle titles, investments, life insurance, retirement policies. Maybe go look for their tax returns. If they had a CPA, contact the CPA. Ask them if they know where I can find any of these documents. Was there a safety deposit box? So you're going to need to get a hold of the bank. And again, a lot of this stuff you are not going to have authority to do until you have that letter of appointment from the court. So again, that's why I listed that first, that you go take care of that first. Check and see if there's a deed. Is the house paid off? Is there a deed in place? Is there a beneficiary deed in place? Because if there's a beneficiary deed in place, the house may not need to go through probate, or a joint tenancy. If your family member was put something in place ahead of time, so that way the house would automatically go to family members, that has happened as well. And then you may have to get appraisal on some of these assets, especially if, let's say, they have an extensive gun collection or coin collection or car collection. If there is not already appraisals done on those things, you may have to bring in professionals to get those items assessed, as well as the home. If there's a single family home involved, make sure you get that appraised right at the get-go, because you want a value of all those items at the time that this person has passed away. Okay, next up, you are going to notify the heirs. You have 30 days, so you're looking at the will. You have 30 days to notify all the heirs and beneficiaries noted. I say those separately because sometimes a family member will put a charity or a friend in there that they want to make sure gets a piece of the pie at the time of disbursement. So you have 30 days to notify all of them. And then within 90 days, you will provide them an itemized list of all the assets, including any of their appraisals. So you can mail it to them, or, you know, hopefully by this time you're in communication with all the heirs and beneficiaries, and have email. You can just email that to them as well. And then you may also need to file documentation with the courts advising that you've taken care of this. This is why it's probably, depending on the extent of your probate, would probably be pretty smart to have an attorney helping you with all of this. This is probably also a good point to set up an EIN number. An EIN is a tax identification number for the estate. So like you and your loved one that passed away, you have what's called a Social Security number. But that's for a person. But now, since you're dealing with an entity, you are going to, or this estate, you're going to want to set up an EIN number. Super easy to do on the IRS website. Make sure you check with your attorney or your CPA to find out what category and how that should be filed. Okay, next on my list is going to be notifying those creditors, because, you know, I want to do that because that's fun. That would be your credit card bills, medical bills, loans, mortgage companies, that sort of thing. Make sure you provide them something in writing. Let them know that this person has passed away. Let them know who you are, that you are the executor of the estate, and you are going through the process of making sure that you're settling the estate. Let them know that the probate's been open, you're trying to settle the estate. They have 60 days to contact you with any debts that are due. So let's say it's a credit card. They have 60 days to get back to you to say, here is the final balance. And then from there, you have 60 days to verify that it's valid, a valid debt, and reject any claims that you don't feel are correct. So let's say as you're going through this person's paperwork, hopefully they're organized, hopefully they file it away. But of course, if they're paperless, you may have to contact that creditor specifically to make sure that you get old statements and stuff. And then you can go look at the statement and see if that's a valid claim. Okay, next up is going to be communicating with all the professionals. So you can get some help on this. So like, you have, basically consider yourself as a fiduciary. Your job is to handle the money part and making sure the disbursement of everything happens. You're going to be talking to a lot of professionals here, and sometimes it's going to be helpful to get family involved, especially like starting to interview real estate agents. Now, the family can't sign any of that paperwork, but they can start the process of interviewing real estate agents. I know this happened with a really dear friend of mine. They lost both of their parents a week apart, and the brother was the executor or the personal representative. However, he was overwhelmed with the amount of duties, and so he left it up to the sisters to make accommodations with the real estate agent. So of course they called me. So that all worked out. But you're going to be talking to appraisers, clearly, because we already talked about that. You're going to be talking to your attorney. You're going to be talking potentially to accountants, because again, you're trying to track down all the assets, financial institutions, title companies. When it comes time to signing all the documents, you'll be conversing with the title company that the real estate professional has lined up for you. And of course, real estate professionals. That's what I do. I'm a real estate agent here in the Phoenix metro area. I help families just like you. And sometimes we can help facilitate some of those. I know I do a lot of that. Because I already have relationships with them. I already know which estate sale companies are going to do a better job than other ones per se, because I've already vetted them. Same thing with appraisals. I'm going to know appraisals. And then the title companies. You really need to make sure that you're working with a title company that knows how to handle these, especially with the probate, because sometimes you can get into some sticky situations. I covered a video about that early on. I'll try to pin that below as well when I talk about a really crazy situation. Anyway, it's going to be really important that you keep good records. So that's going to be the next step. Keep good records as you're going through paperwork. Just put everything in the folder. If you've got family helping you go through paperwork, say if it looks important, it probably is important, put it in the pile so I can go through it later and make sure I'm not missing anything. Save all receipts, especially pertaining to the estate. Make sure you're tracking expenses, even for yourself, because you may have to travel, or you may have to go do a dump run and then you forgot the debit card for the estate account. Make sure you're tracking all those things, because you could be out hundreds of dollars if you're paying for things out of your pocket. And this happens so much. People want to make sure that the landscaping doesn't stop and the pool is being cleaned, those types of things. And then they just not thinking, pay for it out of pocket. And then they forget how much they paid for it so that the estate can reimburse them for that. So make sure you're tracking all those expenses. And of course, all the important documents. And when it comes to those receipts, you could be looking at a plethora of things: landscapers, locksmiths, pool and lawn services, utility bills, cleaning bills, because you are going to have the place cleaned at some point, and home repairs. So if you get into the house and let's say the house has been sitting vacant for a minute, and all of a sudden you realize that the AC condensing line is clogged up and now you have some damages because a leak has happened in the home. So make sure you're keeping track of all those expenses, not only for yourself but for the estate. Okay, we're just going to touch real quick on what executors are not responsible for. They're not responsible for handling everything on their own, even the paperwork. Ask for help if you need help. If you are overwhelmed, you probably have family that can help you. Don't use your own money. I already touched on this earlier. Try really hard not to do your own money. That's why it's really important right from the get-go to follow these steps. Get the personal representative paperwork in place. Get the bank accounts in place, that sort of thing. You are going to need that EIN number to set up an account for the estate. And then follow what's outlined in the will. You can't change the will. You don't have authority to do that. So if you like one person over another, you can't decide, well, I'm going to give them an extra 2% or 5% or whatever. You can't do that. You have to follow how it's outlined in the will. And you're also not the boss. A lot of times what I will run into is I will run into a family, and one of the siblings has been listed as the executor to handle all these things. And then they think that they get to make all of the decisions, and that's just not the case. You are just the fiduciary for the estate, making sure that everybody is paid out once all of the assets have been found, and once all the real estate or cars or guns have been sold, all that money goes into that estate account, and then you can disperse from there. Those are your duties. Your duties are not to decide who gets what in the home or those types of things. So just try to play nice in the sandbox with all your family, because this is going to be extremely emotional for all of you, and everybody processes it a little bit differently. So those are just the checklist of things that you need to consider. We will have future episodes of how to deal with those family members that you don't get along with, or that want to try to control situations, that sort of thing, and all sorts of other things when it comes to an estate. So I think the only thing I might have missed that I probably should touch on, nope, I'm getting that confused with another episode that I want to do. So that's it. That's all I have for you. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.